Hi, my name is Jerry Fielka. Today is August 25, 2021. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Rob Grant. It's your station, Rob. I'm probably wrong about everything, but I know you're right about a lot of things because you're allowing me to do this new series, a brand new series on your channel called InnerViews. So, Rob, we'll see you back towards
You're the
the
captain
end of
now.
this interview. Yes,
All right.
thank you so much.
I know.
Thank you. And so, Jay, it's a real honor and a pleasure to be here with Jay Paulson. Jay, how's it going today?
It's been a little bit crazy, but it's great to be here. I think this is the first I've sat down since I climbed out of bed, and I would love to just take a moment to sit back and soak into that.
That is nice. So, Jay, what's the best thing for a human being?
Peace of mind.
Nice. That's one of my favorite lines in the world. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Poetry.
Wow. So this is auditory or printed reading? Hearing it or reading it?
Well, I think poetry initially was oral and oral, right? It was spoken and heard, but it has transformed quite a bit, and I think now I take it in mostly via the printed word on the page.
Right. And just to divert for a second, you grew up a reader?
You know, I came to reading later in life. I didn't like reading that much when I was young, and if I did, I really liked sciencey stuff. I had a book about frogs, or how to identify reptiles in the field, this kind of thing.
Right.
I wouldn't have considered myself a really literary kind of kid.
Well, we're going to get back to poetry. I'm glad you brought that up. So, is this why do you think humans collect or gather information?
To make life easier, to make existence more tolerable.
Nice. So is this need or want to collect information, gather information, more innate or more invented?
The need to gather information is probably somewhere in the middle, but more towards innate.
More towards innate, yeah. By the way, that was a beautiful pause of silence. That's what we're all about here. Just because I'm asking a stupid question doesn't mean you got to answer just like that.
Nothing stupid about them. I just can't. Some of them you just can't answer like that, even though maybe you ought to.
But that's like, there are no oughtas, have-tos, or gottas. I always say, people go, I gotta do this. I goes, there's no gottas.
Yeah.
There's have-tos.
Yes. I talk to my boys all the time about how most suffering is a result of should.
Amazing word.
Things should be some other way than they currently are.
Should is an amazing word.
Yeah, should creates a lot. Is at the root of a lot of suffering.
Do thoughts create emotion?
No.
Wow. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
dream.
Wow. Is thinking more innate or more invented?
It's invented.
Wow. Can humans think without language?
Yes. They say when you hit your thumb with a hammer, it's a different part of your brain lights up than the vocal part, despite the fact that you vocalize something.
Wait, explain that. I didn't get what you're saying.
So I've come across this information, I assume a reliable source, that just for an example, when you strike your thumb with a hammer and you say something like "ah," or maybe you say something harsher than that, the part of your brain that lights up is not the language part.
It is not the
No,
language.
no, it's something else.
Wow. So that's like neuroscientists are telling you that?
Yeah, that'd be like, yeah, neuroscience and neurolinguistics. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chomsky said language is not just words. It's culture, tradition, unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. How do you cope when language doesn't work?
Yeah. Is this what you just said? I have this language is not
Yeah,
just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history.
that is exactly the quote I just read.
Yeah. That's a
So
favorite of mine too.
yeah, I just set it up. I just set up these questions because I think Chomsky's interesting. We've talked about his, thoughts on language.
You could take it one further, Jerry, because I agree with everything he's saying. And then you got McLuhan saying that language is the ultimate propaganda, right? Or our first propaganda.
Yeah.
And that the language you're born into does shape how you perceive reality and everything around you.
Right. I'm agreeing with Chomsky's quote, but I'm saying when language breaks down, how do you, Jay, cope?
When language breaks down.
Or doesn't work,
Yeah, of course. Well, usually, I mean, listen, there's all sorts of positive, I think more positive methods, but I like donuts. I go eat a donut.
Oh, that is a great answer.
That may not be the healthiest way to deal with when language breaks down, but it works.
Well, coping is, these questions seem like psychological, like, oh yeah, this guy I interviewed the other day said it was like the test in Blade Runner. Do you know those two names they call? What is it called?
Well, there's the Turing test is the one everyone talks about. Is that it?
No, it's not the Turing test. It's a test that's made up as part of the Blade Runner script. So it's a made up test that, anyways, he says, I felt I was in that test,
Yeah.
And Zappa says being interviewed is like being in the Inquisition, and there's all these perceptions of what an interview entails. But my approach is I want to sort of be serious, but at the same time, just have fun, There you go. Rob just shot it out there. That was good. So, do you more pursue happiness? Oh, wait, we're not done with that yet. Sorry. Is now you got ESP because there's two Alan Turing questions from 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Vice versa. The soul is a function of thinking.
Say it again.
The soul is a function of thinking.
Wow. Can machines think?
In strictly in a sort of binary sense, I assume. Yeah.
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 And then your observations of humans in your lifetime, do you feel humans are more thinking beings or more feeling? I know it's both and it depends, but just your inclination.
I do. Look, I don't mean to be a drag. It depends on the human.
Yeah.
I really, some humans are the feelers and some are the thinkers.
Yeah.
Neither good or bad. No value judgment there. Just that might be wiring or it might be environment.
Yeah.
It might be how much time you spend with letters versus like touch or something. I don't understand why necessarily, but I do think there's a variety. Yeah. And everyone's somewhere on the continuum. I do believe that too.
Yeah. I'm glad you're my friend and Rob's my friend because you guys sort of spew back to me the lines I drive in your heads. and you do this. Now I know I'm making a value judgment here, and Rob does the same thing every once in a while. He goes, I know I'm making a value judgment. I go, it's okay to make value judgment. It's just that, the overall is, as we work together with words, if we sort of lean towards not making value judgments all the time, then we're going to suss out the bigger picture. But it's not like, you both do that. You put that little addendum on. It's like, I know, but it's fair, and I appreciate it, because it's like pointing back at me. It's that stupid thing. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
And I do it all the time. I think well, you think point of view is more innate or more invented?
Point of view is innate. Yeah.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
The meaning is happiness. Yeah. And if you pursue meaning, you end up happy.
Yeah. But, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, says that happiness doesn't last, meaning does. Do you think that's true?
Nothing lasts.
Yeah.
So
good.
And there seems to be some kind of a reinvention of all of it over and over and over, like whatever you want to call it, a cycle or something. But, your own, what the meaning that you're seeking can change myriad times throughout a lifetime, right?
Exactly. Like Vico's ricorso, you mean?
Sure. Or Nietzsche called it eternal return, or Buddha called it something else, and somebody else called it something else, because those are just words for the same thing.
Good. I love people who drop Nietzsche, man. That always impresses me.
I only like dropping it when I say it wrong. So I say like Nietzsche, or I people who know how to say Van Gogh the right way.
Oh, well, wait a minute. How about Rambo? The guy, really big shot filmmaker I was interviewing, he goes, Rambo, and I goes, you mean Sylvester Stallone? He goes, no, Rambo, the poet. It was like so embarrassing. And I goes, well, I thought it was Rimbo. And he goes, no, it's Rambo.
I know. I do it too with Wittgenstein.
Yeah.
It sort of allows me to say I have no idea what I'm talking about while talking about big things.
Nice. I think Mel Brooks nailed it. What does he do on Frankenstein or is it on Frankenstein he does it? Anyways.
Frankenstein, that one?
Yeah, Frankenstein or Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Okay, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
These days, I tend to think consciousness is probably just more closely like what we would recognize as attention. So does the brain cause attention? That's just tough. That's so tough.
Yeah.
But I do think we can demystify, and we should be demystifying consciousness at every turn by saying sort of like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? Just sort of self-awareness, or, I think attention, where and what you are attending to.
Yeah, I like that word awareness, but what do you mean by demystify? What does that word mean?
Well, to me, it says what it says, sort of like taking the mystery out of something. These words are incredibly complicated and poorly defined, even in the fields that study them.
Right.
And so you find yourself, in conversation about them, and you might be talking to somebody about something that they have a completely different concept of what it is that's being discussed.
Yeah, I always go like brandy. I go, do you mean the pop star or the alcoholic drink?
Or that song.
Or the song. And then Jesus, I go, do you mean the TV miniseries or the God?
Or the gentleman who helps me with my yard.
Yeah, that's it. It's endless. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
speed of light.
Wow. What do you worry?
So I'm told. I don't know how fast the speed of light is, right? They just told me.
Yeah.
They put a mirror on one hill and a mirror on a hill a long way away, and there was the way that they could measure it.
Right.
And I believe them.
And then how could you measure the speed of thought? Can we?
Well, from a materialist point of view, you could say a thought couldn't be any faster than the neurons firing, right?
Right.
So if neurons didn't possess but I know some people believe that there are rods in the brain that house quantum computers. So, we're just we're grasping at straws always.
Yeah. Good. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
How am I going to fall asleep?
You mean like this or like that?
Yeah. Because about 3 years ago, yes and no. 3 years ago, I read that, you really need to sleep on your side. I've been sleeping on my stomach my whole life. And apparently that's not very good for you, especially your neck or your back and stuff. And also there's new thoughts out there that if you sleep on your side, your brain actually empties more efficiently. The juices of your brain, your brain is swimming in stuff, I suppose. And the juices get, who knows, polluted or cloudy during the day, all doing all these sort of Zoomer views and having to think about tricky things with friends. And then, so at the end of the day, it really needs to relax and drain. And so if you sort of sleep on one side, it's supposed to help your brain drain in the most positive sense of the phrase. So, long story already too long, but I tried to train myself to sleep on my side starting about 3 years ago. And, it was easier than I thought at first, but you do want to default to the old habitual ways,
Right, but have you distinctly felt it is better or it's the same?
I do think it's better. Yeah. In fact, when I do end up on my tummy for a night, I usually do have a sore neck or back, not excruciating, but noticeable.
But what's the rating? On your side, then on your back, then on your stomach, or is there?
Yeah, I think that is how it would go, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of people have a problem on their back with snoring.
Is that what it is?
A lot of back sleepers end up snoring because of the way that your body, has in the airways and whatnot.
Oh, that is good to know. That was really nice. That did really okay. So, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. That's Audre Lorde. Yvonne Rainer said you can if you expose the tools. What new tool can you suggest?
To dismantle the house?
You can put any of my questions, you can put them into the context of the quote, but you don't have to. Yeah.
Bayesian logic, it's kind of in the zeitgeist right now, I think. So I feel a little cheesy saying it, and I may not practice it perfectly, but it has to do, it's like this kind of like ultra rational thing that's occurring right now. And, recognizing that, the way you take new information and stock it with the old information, and basically being more aware of what's coming in and how much credence you give it. But that might help take houses down, if everyone started to sort of really think about which information was coming at them, from where, how they decided to intake that, and whether or not they allow it to affect their prior systems of information.
Right. That was good. And Bayesian is spelled how?
Bayes. There it is.
Bayesian, that's good. Okay, Bayesian logic. Thank you for turning me on to a new thing. I got to explore that. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and receiving the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we may be able to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So McLuhan said, we can look to our artists, our poets, our filmmakers, our painters, our Zoomers to reveal the hidden psychic effects, but humans still ignore them. Why? We have this source. Why do we ignore the source?
First, you have to assume that Ezra Pound was correct. I don't necessarily know that that's the case. You know, I actually find it to be a little bit of an elitist statement. It generates fear in me as someone who enjoys thinking of myself as a creative individual. I think it's an us and them kind of comment, right? I don't understand why the cashier at the 99-cent store couldn't be the antennae of the human race.
Too, yeah.
She's
I think
certainly capable of, yeah.
Let me just reword it though. That is like the cashier as an art form. They're an artist too. The garbage collector is that's his art form. So it's basically, I understand that because I've actually had that comment from someone recently. They didn't agree with Pound's statement. But let's just say people in their pursuits, in their professions, in their callings, let's say callings, their calling to be the cashier, are broadcasting these hidden psychic effects. It's sort of like a daily ritual. We all do it. But why do humans ignore these hidden psychic effects, even though they're being broadcast by their fellow humans?
Right.
Let's put it that way.
That's the function of the medium, right? That goes back to McLuhan also, right? That every medium comes along with its own like perfectly titrated narcotic to put you to sleep to it, right? That's my understanding.
What's titrated mean?
Titrate is the way you sort of would measure something out just right. You know, like you might not need as much as anesthesia to be knocked out for surgery as I do, because people tell me I'm a redhead, and redheads take more anesthesia for surgery.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So you'd have to titrate different amounts of anesthesia for myself than for you. You know, you would let my drip go a little bit faster than your drip.
Wow. Well, that was good. So,
but I don't know if that's true either. But I mean, this is what I believe. You know, it's like when we get into McLuhan together too. It's like he did say, right? The thing comes with its own sleepwalking sauce, right?
Yeah.
So,
sleepwalking sauce. That is good. Well, you know what someone recently said, because I'm always interested in challenging the question, the wording of the question. They said, have humans always ignored them? And so like, did you know, Pound said this thing and then McLuhan tapped into it. And then, you know, it rings of some validity, because we go to these big movies and see these big things, and then they do affect people's thoughts. You know, you know, like Richard Modiani at Beyond Broke told me. I says, "Can movies do anything?" He says, "Yeah. When James Dean sticks his cigarettes in his shirt, then kids are doing that." Yeah. So that's maybe even not a hidden, but it you could interpret it that way. But someone said, well, have we always ignored the hidden psychic effects? So was it like at some point people started going, hey, those cave paintings are telling us something more than we think?
Yeah. Or did we have any choice or say in the matter of ignoring it? You know, I think about the invention of the campfire, and who was going to opt out? all of your loved ones and your entire clan decide that now the end of the day isn't prescribed by the sun going down. We get to call it, and we're all going to spend time around this amazing thing, telling stories, singing, dancing, and being together. Who was the caveman who said, like, pass? I'm going to just stay up here in the cold, dark, scary place.
That is a heavy thought.
But you guys had a good time. So how was anyone able to withstand that?
That's an incredible thought, Jay, to think that someone invented the campfire. And it's got to be true. I always say, what's the first human invention? And people always go, well, not people always, but they often go, fire. I says, well, we didn't invent fire. We invented how we harness fire, or fire management, or fire starting,
right.
Which is a campfire is fire management. Let's put it in rocks in a circle and have a little pile. That's an epiphany. So, are you more afraid of old ideas or more afraid of new ideas?
I guess the old ideas. Yeah, I guess I'm more frightened of the old ideas.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Well, I appreciate you saying it's great, but it's, where I got it, I have to tell you because it's funny. John Cage said, I can't understand why people are afraid of new ideas. I'm afraid of the old ones.
I'm glad I answered that way. Then I'm in good company.
But here's the other one I love. This is the guy who invented the intermittent windshield wiper.
Okay.
Charles Kettering. People are very open-minded about new things as long as they're exactly like the old ones.
Right.
Can you conjure up your earliest memory or one of them?
My earliest memory is being at the top of the stairs and seeing my mother come in the front door. That's my first memory. So I was looking at her through the banister railing like that.
That is
downwards, and then seeing her come in the front door, and there's light behind her, and I don't know where she was coming from, but yeah, I do have that.
It's amazing, Jay, how many people include light in their first memory.
I'm not surprised.
It's amazing. Okay, is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, gosh. I'm going to be positive and say blessing. I'm going to try to be positive. Every bit of me wanted to say curse. Does that count as an answer? This is really fun, and I'm loving this every minute. So tell me a role model within your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, just briefly, and what was that impact? Role model within my family. Yeah, or sometimes people don't like the word role model. So it's someone who had an impact on you in your immediate family. Then the next one is going to be outside your immediate family. Just someone who had an impact on you. I like the word role model, but you get a sense sort of where it's going. My sons are good role models for me. That's yeah. I get to watch them handle stuff. Yeah. And boy, you flip that like nobody's business. Well, they both, that's the truth. They both carry burdens like in a very graceful way that I envy, and that I would be. I'd consider myself a very successful human being if I could carry these kind of things the way. Yeah. Well, I can testify that's pretty accurate because I know both of them. So how about outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you? Yeah, I thought Mickey Rourke was pretty cool when I was a kid. Well, what age are you first seeing him in, and what venue? I must have been, I got to him pretty late, and then I went back. So, I mean, by the time I was thinking he was great, he was of the bad stuff like Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, and just kind of, he has already posed his sort of phenomenon stage, and then he gave it all up to be a boxer, which I thought was like, at the time I thought, man, that's what it's all about. Just, to turn your back on things like that, on that kind of success, just to follow your dream. And, I can remember, yeah. I mean, I had other role models. I loved bums. I really loved hanging. I spent time. That's what we used to call them. It's not okay to call them that anymore. So I can use the word unhoused, or what's
whatever. That's fine.
What's the ideal? Even when I was hanging with them, they called themselves bums, and and I love to be around them and try and hear their stories and spend time with them, and even drink with them when I could, or when
Oh, that's beautiful. You really, really did well on those questions. Were you raised a particular religion?
My mother and father raised me Roman Catholic. We went to church every Sunday, and I was baptized, reconciled, first communicated, confirmed. When I changed from Catholic school to non-Catholic school, I had to go on Saturdays to this thing called CCD, which was basically like all the Catholic school you would have had during the week at a good Catholic school that you missed out on for not being at a Catholic school. You caught up for that on the weekends. So yeah, I was brought up Catholic, I think, in a fairly classical sense.
But did you ever officially check out, or did you check out, or are you basically still practicing?
Oh, so I had an interesting journey in that church. Like I actually I began to check out, and then I became interested in religious studies in college. And because I'll say because I had such a foundation in it, I decided to go like drill down in it, because this is where I was from. This is what I knew. This seemed like this was what was most available to me. So I kind of doubled down for a while. I even thought what it would be like to be a priest, and what was the whole thing really about, and reading all these different translations of the New Testament and trying to really get it at Jesus. And at the same time in college, I had my eyes open to sort of like a more Eastern philosophies, some of the Eastern thought, specifically Buddhism. In sort of comparative religion courses, you got to sort of dabble in each and take a little taste of each. And there were things on those other belief systems that were much more appealing. And when I allowed myself, and it did take some time, when I allowed myself to be a little more questioning about what I had been brought up in, and maybe sort of how clearly I was able to see my own environment that had been created for me. I was able to sort of wiggle free of that a little bit, and I did sort of say farewell to most of it, and haven't really looked back.
Amazing. Well, so well put, Jay. Now, do you pray?
Not in the sense of to a being or anything like that.
If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
This is heavy. I always knew you could do it.
Oh, that is really good. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Neither. People are evil because suffering.
Yeah. Really good. So this is set up with a lot of quotes again, but the basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the samurai and the mob. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK says, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So the question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you react to the Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
You have to acknowledge. I don't know where he's coming from, to be honest. I can't relate to that.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge before you can begin any sort of, the enemy probably, like most human beings, wants to be seen and heard. If you don't acknowledge them, you won't see or hear them, and then there's sort of nowhere to go from there. I don't know. I'm sure I know he's a super deep guy, so he probably means something else, but it seems like putting your head in the sand.
Well, no, it's interesting because people often flip it and go, if you don't acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. So it's tricky. But yeah. I mean, basically, you have it. How do you advise your sons to deal with an enemy? That's a good example. How would you advise someone? So you have two sons. If something pops up, what do you say to them? That's like enemies, the environment of enemy.
Well, knock it off.
You mean knock off calling them an enemy?
No, you say to your enemy, knock it off.
Oh, tell your enemy, knock it off. Yeah, that's good. Just knock it off.
That's the first. I mean, you can start from there. If they continue, then we need a new set of tools.
Knock it off. That is good, Jay. You're truly one of these great poets because you know how to be concise. Like, Amy Gerson, I told you she's an amazing poet, and she would answer because you guys know the economy of words. You know how to say more with less. It's really a talent. I mean, I appreciate it. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin, allegedly. And he basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play and watch people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
This may get back to what you were talking about just a few moments ago, where you said, why aren't we aware of the hidden psychic effects?
Yeah.
And then I do think, especially taking theater into consideration, the early theater was, although there was a propaganda element to it that we can't ignore that, but that it did exist in at least some capacity to tell people how to live and how to behave and what morals were appropriate. I also think that it's sometimes when you're distanced from it, and let's say we're watching it, you're able to sort of see, just as Joyce was the projectionist, we project ourselves onto him and imagine ourselves as the main character and are able to say, oh, I would do that in this situation. I wouldn't do that in this situation. Can you believe they behave this way? They behave that way.
Yeah, that's good. It puts us in a situation that we might not be in, then we have to learn how to deal with it.
There's a dissociation there, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, there's also this really interesting connectivity too, though, when you see yourself as someone else. So in that sense, it fosters real empathy, maybe, which is so key to the human journey, right? You've got to find ways to have this empathy and this connectivity, and something happens there too, especially in reading. I won't say as much in movies, although a lot of times in movies you forget. 2 hours go by and you've just been sitting in a chair for, carried away. You haven't been you for 2 hours. That's really an amazing thing, especially if for some of that 2 hours you've been imagining what it might be like to be another human being, or,
Well, Jay, you taught me an amazing thing. I'd love you to just suss it out a little, is that the first word could have been you. Is that what it is? Or yeah.
That is. Yeah, there's legitimate.
Yeah, explain that, how you how you came about that and what it means to you.
Well, I'm fascinated by language in general, you know that, and also just by it occurred. Look, if we invented speaking, then there had to have been a first word, at least something, right? And then gesture too may have preceded language, but and this goes back to. I mean, I got some of it from this guy Cassirer, Cassirer, but even before looking into him, there's proto-linguistic evidence that the first word was most likely you. And it was probably spoken with a T sound, as it is in most cultures, like Spanish it's tu, and in a lot of other languages the U still has the tu sound. And it had the tu sound even in our language when we knew it as thou. But we've dropped all that. So yeah, you, the way we're saying it, some version of you would have been the first word, and it makes, I think, sense. But it also is the first divide, right? We've talked about the first invention perhaps was a line in the sand, or some way of dividing, and that would have been you as well. There had to be some way of saying this part is me, this is where I stop, and you are over there. You begin there. And these were probably shortcuts for, again, for getting through reality more smoothly, I think.
Amazing, because the other one is Peter Naughton's hero. You know him, the guy in South America, Augusto Boal.
Boal, yeah. Yes.
How do you pronounce his last name?
Boal. Augusto Boal, B-O-A-L, yeah.
And he's theater of the what?
Theater of the oppressed.
Theater of the oppressed. He says the first human invention was theater, which is a form of you, like going, oh, you, it's like it is some sort of divide. There's separateness. We're not all just oneness, you know?
No.
Yeah. That was good. So
what follows really closely after you, though, is he, she, it.
Right.
So almost immediately after you comes. So you have this. You go from the all one to the dual, and then to the us and them, really quickly.
Us and them, and that's divide and conquer.
Yeah, it's these ways of separating ourselves, you know.
Yeah. For
better and worse.
Heavy. So walk us through how did you first, we'll take two of your callings in life, actor and poet. Yeah. Walk us through, at what point did you go, oh, I want to do that? You know, like sort of when did you start watching TV and movies? And at that point, you know, you mentioned Mickey O'Rourke, but I'm saying, you know, walk us through your sort of genesis on both those two callings.
I came to acting very accidentally, and I'm very glad I did. But I was in 9th grade, and I was looking for something to do and somewhere to belong, as a lot of 9th graders are. And it was a very tough time. I had tried a number of sports. I was the second worst wrestler on the team. Just as long as I wasn't the worst, right? And I had tried a little bit of. I had tried sports, and it wasn't for me. It wasn't happening. And then one day I missed the school bus, and some kids were hanging around this place called the Drama Lab, which I had never had much business being near. But I asked them what was up, and they said, today were the auditions for the school play. And I said, what's that about? They said it would be a lot of fun. What do you have to do to be a part of it? You read these lines. When you sign up here, and when you go in the room, you read these pieces of paper. And so I went for it. And the next day they put up the cast list, and I had been included. And so I was a part of the fall production of Jean-Claude Vagnatelli's The Interview.
Nice.
It was like, we had no business doing this. It was like this surrealist insanityscape from the 60s of like absurdist theater. And here we were like 13-year-olds, you know, strutting around on stage, pretending to be these like grown-ups with these existential strife. And so anyway, long story short, I had a really good time doing it, not just being on stage and having everyone look at me, which was plenty exciting and adrenaline rushing, but what I really liked were some of the people I was with. You know, yeah. They were all Black, and they were also maybe a little bit of had trouble fitting in other areas of high school life, and I found sort of like you want to call it a tribe or my people, however people say. You know, I felt like these are some people who I can at least believe I'm being myself with, even though in hindsight there was quite a bit of pretense in almost everything that was done because of our age and who we wanted to be and the way that humans behave, you know, in situations like that. But it did feel like a coming home of sorts. And then on top of that, people would say, "You're good, you know, you were good in that thing." And you know, I had such a good time, I auditioned for the next one. And that time I knew when the auditions were being held and what was it for, and I had a good time in that one. And so I just kept going and going and going. I never, I knew I wanted to pursue it professionally, but I assumed it would happen after 4 years of college. But in a very pleasant surprise, in 11th grade, someone was in the audience who saw me and thought I had what it took to try a professional career out. And he sort of took me under his wing and started to submit me throughout the various projects around town, and some of those actually took off. And so by my senior year in high school, I was on a nationally televised sitcom, and I did still manage to go to school. I was accepted to UCLA's School of Theater, and that wasn't for me. So really quickly, I got into the College of Letters and Sciences to try and be an English major. My other passion was always writing. I wrote poetry throughout high school, and I mentioned earlier I would spend time with people who I thought were genuine or real, whatever those words meant to me then or mean to me now. Oftentimes that looked like me spending time with less fortunate, however you want to say it, unhoused individuals, and trying to sort of figure out what was so real about them, you know. And so I was writing and reading back then and writing a lot of poetry in high school. And I had a teacher in high school that taught poetry and creative writing. And he gave me a lot of belief in myself, or faith in myself. And I really enjoyed his courses. So I had these two things going and was able to pursue them in college and professionally. And as the acting sort of took more center stage, if you will, I gave less to the writing and more to the acting.
Yeah, because you can make your living being an actor, and you've been in Soderbergh and George Clooney and Scorsese films. That's pretty dang good. So this is beautiful. But you told us Mickey Rourke. Was there anyone else once you started getting, like, where was the Mickey in that high school 11th grade? Where did you see the Mickey? He would have like a role model. Like, yeah,
that was still pretty younger. He would have been, to me, less from a point of view of an actor looking up to another actor. It would have been more like a young man looking at someone he thought was a badass.
He's cool. Yeah.
Then as I became more interested in acting, you know, like I would cast a wide net, as wide as I could back then, and I was trying to take from everywhere. And I really wanted to be. Listen, I had the pleasure of working there was a high school. My high school program was pretty. It was well funded, and it had a guy running it who really cared and wanted us to be doing. I mean, like I told you, this one guy wanted us to be doing surrealist theater in 9th grade. It's like, so we were doing these really. We were doing Chekhov, and there was one Shakespeare play a year. So there was somebody there saying, it's okay to take this seriously, even though it's been fun. You can do it for fun, but you can also take it seriously. And I remember showing up to some early rehearsals and seeing the lead actress who's she's wearing ankle weights around her ankle to ground her performance and to bring her to the earth, and we were like in 10th grade. And I remember thinking, okay, so there are some people who do this for fun, and there are some people who are like taking this to a whole other level and are exploring this in a different way. And so I felt really grateful that I had that opportunity to see that early. And it didn't necessarily mean that I took it that seriously that early, although I tried. But what I'm getting around to in a long way is that I would take inspiration from anywhere I saw, and whatever I thought was interesting or worth trying out, I would do. And so you ask about like who my acting influences were, it would be whatever was on top of mind, really. I remember I had a lot of success early on with like a double or a triple take. I mean, this is just basic stuff, but like a double take, classic double take had been going on in vaudeville, right? Forever, and there's a bit of an art to it. It's a bit of physical comedy. And I thought no one did it better than the young man who played Buckwheat on The Little Rascals.
Hello.
So I would start doing a Buckwheat take in auditions, and this went all the way to network television when I was cast on the show with Sybil Shepherd, and I would do this take, and it got great laughs. We were doing it in front of a studio audience, and it was a part homage, and it was I never pretended I invented it. I don't think that gentleman who played Buckwheat invented the double take.
Yeah.
But he certainly mastered it. And I was a student of the master. And so I would do this take on the reg. It was a part of my character. And I remember going away for a week or so, and I wasn't in an episode or two. And when I came back, Sybil Shepherd came up to me and said, "Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Last week I did a J take, and the audience loved it."
Oh my God.
And I said, "A J take? What are you talking about?" She goes, "Oh, that take you do, And so she unwittingly had done a Buckwheat take, double take, a la Buckwheat from Little Rascals.
Dude,
But so I know that's a little roundabout way, but you talk about influences. I mean, I went straight to Brando and Dean and all those guys who were supernatural, and I loved them. And I have to say, like, I was 100% into naturalism. That was where I began, wholeheartedly, fully natural.
Yeah.
Often the default would be, how would I do it? How would I say it? What I came to find later is that unless you have this just ridiculous galactic amount of charisma and innate juju, naturalism is a pitfall.
Wow.
And most people just doing what they do is kind of the opposite of interesting. It's actually like ridiculously habitual and boring. And I came to that through a teacher later on. And after that, I became much more interested in actors who make bold choices, who go out of their way to make creative decisions, not just lay back on their innate charisma as such.
Yeah, you really explained that well, Jay. That was beautiful. And then to poetry, you have this English teacher, you have this English pursuits. Is there any early poets, or was it pretty widespread too? Any early poets that you're reading on, that's what I want to do? Any specifics?
Yeah, the early guys, which I'm like, I think like a lot of younger people, I got really carried away with Kerouac and the Beats, and then Bukowski. I liked Alcoholics, probably because I was one, and so I thought there was something really, really cool about being like an alcoholic, bum poet. That seemed to me so authentic and genuine. And what I'm really glad for is that later I was able to achieve and maintain sobriety and recognize that you don't necessarily need to be some broken soul to create. And that, and then that's opened me up to a whole other just pantheon of amazing poets, who don't necessarily have to be tortured, who are just phenomenal craftsmen with language and words and know how to meet you with a phrase or a sentence,
Well, you said that well, Jay. So let's just jump into this. A screenwriting teacher told me that great film or great art, great poem is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great film or great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
I try to get out of the way of it, I would say. I think it's at best, it's misguiding. It may be a powerful force, but I don't think it's leading you to the truly creative state. I mean, I think you do need to have a framework. You got a technique that allows you to create. That's a little bit different, I think, than an intention behind it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing because you would say with acting, here's your script, read these lines, and then your poem is the exact opposite. You're just looking at a blank page and go, well, what am I going to put on that? So that's quite a range of your two callings.
Sure.
In regards to intention. But let's go to this. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience when you're acting, and how much are you thinking of your audience when you're writing your poem?
I would say when you're writing, you cannot think of an audience. That's the immediate death of it. There can be no, not even a first thought of that. It has to be 100% for the act of creation, I believe.
Yeah.
Now with the acting, I think there are different modalities that require some consideration of audience. So for film and television, you probably don't need to consider the audience nearly as much.
Yeah.
Theater and voice acting, you might need to more so. And theater, one of the most magical things about theater is that there is, in fact, an exchange occurring in real time. And that cannot be completely ignored.
Yeah.
That has to be taken in. If you want to have an authentic performance, it must be taken in on some level. So now in front of the camera or something, you can cheat, and it's not ideal, but you can. You recognize that this thing is going to be cut into pieces, and they're going to put your one piece here when you say this thing here, and you can let some things go, but you can't get away with that on the stage. And then voice acting, which I don't have a lot of experience, but what little I do have, I can imagine you would want some kind of feedback. How is this sounding? I've even thought a couple of times during this thing we've been doing, I'm speaking really flatly and monotone. I ought to change my levels a little bit.
Right. You mean have dynamic shifts? No, it's fine.
It's okay. It could be really exciting if I would change things up a little.
I am happy. I'm speaking from my heart. I'm always happy with you, Jay. At least it's stimulating. We got a special thing. So let's go to the utensil you use for writing a poem, whether it's a keyboard or a pencil. Like, McLuhan says, everything we invent extends some humanness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? What humanness or human sensorium?
I suppose you'd say speech.
Yeah.
Suppose you'd say speech when you're dealing with when I'm thinking of the printed word. So the thoughts are being typed out. I do use a typewriter or a computer, and they're being typed to be at some point on a page to be read by somebody else to put images into their mind, which is what I believe speech does.
Yeah, that was good. What's the function of poetry?
I mean, Wallace Stevens says to make a human happier.
Really? That's good.
It doesn't get much better than that, but there's so many answers to that, Jerry. The function of poetry. Yeah, I'm going to say to relieve loneliness.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. But it doesn't get much better than Stevens.
That's pretty good. I like Rexroth too. Woo your lover and subvert the bourgeois.
Dude, that's I love that too.
Yeah,
and that's Dustin Hoffman when he says, "I only got into acting for the chicks."
Yeah, that's Rexroth used to read at Sponto Gallery in Venice, so I'm proud of that. So there's one other line I like to ask poets, and I don't know what this means. You know, Mallarmé's a symbolist. Leo Bersani's Mallarmé study, he says this: the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. You know, I don't really know what that means. I have a hunch, but I'm just curious how you process those words. And I could say them again if you want.
Yeah, I'll ask you to say them again, but I also think it's interesting how immediately I long to read them. You know, I want to have them in front of me.
Yeah. The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition.
Yeah, maybe sort of the hopelessness, maybe hopelessness.
Yeah, the hopelessness that you're going to write a poem helps you write the poem.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, or maybe even, let's say it one more time. I don't want to take up too much time on this, but it's worth it.
No, it's because I think it's the epitome of everything. The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition.
Yeah, the crisis that threatens the writing of poetry is that it's pointless.
It sustains
so the pointlessness itself sustains poetry. Yeah. So I guess, and you know, I think obviously we know he was a special guy, but it's just to be able to come up with something like that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
But that's Leo Bersani. He was studying Mallarmé, and that's how he came up. But this one's sort of evident, but I would just like, if it resonates. Gary Snyder: my task as a poet entails the work of seeing the world without language, then bringing that seeing into language.
We've shared that one before, and it's astute. You know, I don't know if it's 100% how I would put it, but
yeah.
He says he uses the word seeing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you might, I mean, would it be heftier to say experiencing, or I don't know, more holistic than just seeing? That's so visual, right?
It's very visual. It's more holistic. That's what we want to be, more holistic. It is. It's like getting the big picture. And I think that's what Gary's about. So, you know, I asked him this question, and I'll ask you. T.S. Eliot said, poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Hieroglyphics.
Oh, that is great. Because, you know, when I asked Gary this downtown LA at the library in front of a big crowd, can you tell me what language your inner dialogue is? And he went, no.
I'm being a jerk because, you know, hieroglyphics is I'm being silly, but you know, it's interesting. Inner language is really powerful. I do believe that. I mean, you've got all these scripts that some of them have been written for you, and they're on repeat up there, and they do come in a voice.
It's endless. You know, one of my favorites is Abigail Childs, experimental filmmaker in New York. She goes, "I wish I knew." I wish I knew what language my inner dialogue was in. I goes, that is a great answer.
Yeah.
So, what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Compromise.
Wow. There's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right, Jay. What was the motive of the cave artist? Just off the top of your head, you know, your hunt.
Kilroy was here.
That is good. You've accomplished a lot. Rate these three elements, factors: skill, luck, and ambition. What's the biggest, second, and third?
Oh, this one I need to go to my quote bank for, because I haven't learned it by heart yet, but it's so important. So what did you ask? Skill, luck, and
ambition. What played the biggest part in your accomplishments?
Well, it all begins with luck. I can't get away from that. All accomplishment and decomplishment is all due to chance.
You said that, or someone said that?
That's me, man. That's all
accomplishment and decomplishment does what with chance? Starts?
It's due to chance, yeah.
Due to chance, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
That really is. I didn't ask for any of this. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Right.
You know?
Can art make
you... stuff.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just think that is important. I wish we would be a little more aware of generally that the fact that we landed here is due to so many things that were out of our control, and also that means also the bad things people do were probably out of their control as well. I think we definitely need to radically reimagine culpability in general, and people's control over themselves.
Well, that's my question. Are we making it happen or watching it happen?
Yeah, I'm going to lean towards watching.
Yeah.
You know?
Is perception reality?
No. No, hard no. What were the other things you said? Skill, ambition, and luck?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Skill, luck, and ambition.
Yeah, luck comes first, then ambition and skill are tied. Sorry, well, not worth going back to it. Sorry.
That's fine. Leave that. Yeah, that's actually stupid.
I will say this though. I'll say this for skill. Actually, Paul Klee will say this for skill. Diligence stands higher than talent.
Wow.
So this is one of these things lately I'm trying to sort of work into my rules to live by.
Diligence. Give me another word. You mean, is that persistence?
Effort. Right effort.
Yeah, effort. Yeah.
Right effort.
Right. R-I-G-H-T?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Ultimate. that there perhaps could be an ultimate truth.
Nice. Tell me one major element of your creative process that's changed. You've been doing this for decades. One that's changed and one that's stayed the same.
Elements of creative process that have changed. As I said, the biggest shift for me was from naturalism to to a technique that was more interested in human creativity.
Right. Okay. You answered that. That's
but that I think is really big and worth discussing a tiny bit more. I'll take a moment to say, if we're operating most of our day out of habit, 99.9% of the day operating out of habit, knowingly or not knowingly, then chances are the individual you bring to the creative act is also a creature of habit. So unless you are actively trying to get out of your own habitual way, your ability to have any kind of, I'm going to say authentic creative act, even though that's not the ideal word, is hindered by that. So this brings you to this idea of trying to find some technique or some framework to help you break out of those habitual ways of seeing, being, behaving, and help you into a more creative way. And so that was the real move for me, was from just saying, oh, I'm just going to say it how I would say it. I'm just going to do it how I would do it. To saying, no. Why on earth would anybody be doing this? What could some reasons for this be, And not just my first thoughts, because my first thoughts are going to be habitual. So what would maybe the opposite of my first thought be? That's a way, now at least I'm getting somewhere. Sort of tricking yourself into these reverse somersaults to end up with something that I believe is going to end up being not only more creative, but more engrossing. You talk about considering the audience. To me, that would be where the last time you consider the audience as an actor would be in the rehearsal process. And it would be an indirect consideration. It would be something more akin to, how can I make this the most all-encompassing, universe allowing in performance possible, so that I can actually be having some kind of a creative experience to be transmitted, whether it's through TV, film, radio, or poem.
Yeah. Jay, so well put. It reminded me of McLuhan's carefully make plans, then do the opposite.
Yes, exactly.
And then that's courage. You got a lot of it. I'm inspired by your courage, but also it reminded me of, I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity.
Listen, I'm there with you. I understand this too. People think it's ridiculous. You say you when you rehearse this way, people will say, "No one would ever do that. Nobody would ever do that if that happened to them." Well, that's actually not true at all. The fact that I even thought that it could happen, it can. Terence, this famous Roman guy, this Roman playwright says, "I'm human. Nothing human is foreign to me."
Yeah.
These are great things to think about with empathy too. When people say you have to stay in your lane or something, it's like, of course I can't imagine, I can't really ever know what someone else's pain and suffering are like, but I can really honestly attempt to go there with an with an open heart.
Yeah.
I'm a human too.
Say it again.
I'm human as well. I have salty tears and red blood.
Yeah. Yeah, that was beautiful. Well put, Jay. So Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
I want some time with this one only because I have so many weaknesses.
Well, I'm totally fine with time, but you don't have to, if one pops in your mind, that's fine. It's not like you don't have to prioritize them.
Yeah. I think, I'll come back. If I can come up with one in sort of on the back burner.
That's all right. No problem.
Just learning. I think what you said, though, that's so powerful, is learning that a weakness can be a strength. Turning a breakdown into a breakthrough.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful practice. It's a very...
Yeah.
The wisdom in the wound is how I had it put to me.
Wow. Wisdom in the wound. That is good. Yeah, I just watched the Pauline Kael documentary, and it's like it just pinnacles at the end, and she goes, she turned her weakness into a strength. She turned her breakdown into a breakthrough. And I'm like, wait a minute.
What did they say her weakness is on Diamond?
Oh, God, I'm going to summarize it another time because I didn't memorize it perfectly, but she had a few, and it's just, I think the movie is very touching and well done. And the art of Pauline Kael, it's an honest movie, I would say, especially because they got her daughter to really talk, and that was good. They have a lot of clips of her talking too. So how do you find peace of mind?
See your breath.
Nice. Now explain that, because you taught me that about 2 weeks ago, and I've been doing it as a mantra to people for 2 weeks.
You can do it for your whole life. You can do it.
But what does it mean?
You disappear.
Yeah, what does it mean? Because people might misconstrue.
I think the easiest way to say it is absorption is nibbana, or what's a better term for it? Absorption is peace of mind. So the outfielder chasing the fly ball is perfectly attuned, perfectly absorbed. And it's not a blanking out, it's a one-pointedness. Upekkha is a term you could say, but this one-pointed focus becomes peace of mind. It is peace of mind. And so a good object to use can be the breath. I found it to be really, really difficult and too subtle, but you can always keep practicing that. You can always try to see your breath, and whatever that means for you.
That is beautiful. It really hit me. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
It's not such a big deal.
Nice. Here's 5 quickie Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head, briefly on each one, like 2 to 5.
I'm going to go back to my 12-year-old. Sorry, I wasn't done with it.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Your existence is worthy of all good things.
Nice. Dr. John, the great New Orleans pianist, he answered all these questions. When I got to the 12-year-old, he goes, I won't go there.
I don't blame him, man.
It's like voodoo, But
I don't blame him. That's really intense stuff. In fact, you want to go back to acting for a minute? In almost every acting class you've ever been in, they walk you back through like a staircase in time, and at the bottom of the staircase, you meet your little self, and he really needs to hear something from you. What is it you're going to say to him? And then every time, every student in class bawling. It's just amazing. But to me, it does speak to the fact that is a part of who you are and will always be. We live in a society that does say you at some point you were cut from them, you have moved on, you're a grown up or whatever, you are no longer a child. That is absolutely incorrect. I can speak to that. You carry that little guy or gal or they with you through the whole of your existence. And if you don't attend to them, if you do believe that they're something long gone, you increase the amount of suffering that you're going to have in this journey.
Yeah. Well, it is one other I have to say is Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend, not his wife. I interviewed her. She had this book. It's a pretty amazing book. And I didn't ask her about Lee Harvey Oswald. She was so relieved. And I said, you're a 12-year-old, you meet yourself. What would you say? She goes, I love you. And I mean, I cried. I was like, that is just to say to your 12-year-old self, I love you. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So these are 5 Alan Watts questions, just really quick. Who started it all?
Beginningless. It's beginningless.
Beginningless. Oh, that's beautiful. Are we going to make it?
It depends on who you mean by we.
Where do we put it?
Say
it again. You broke up there.
Where it belongs.
Who's cleaning it up?
Many hands make light work.
Beautiful. Is it serious?
As serious as a heart attack.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want. I knew you were going to ask it, and I thought of all these things, and I got something. Say it again. Tell me. I don't want to be cheeky. Yeah, what's the? No, that's all right. It's tell me something good you never had, but you never wanted. An enema. That's a good answer. I've never had that. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do? Eat shit and die. That is good. Whoa. Can you forget to die? Yes. Wow. On what occasion do you lie? Yeah, I'm going to go one thing. Please, please. If you see your breath, you never die. Wow. If you see your breath, you never die. That is good, Jay. Okay, now Marcel Proust's question. On what occasion do you lie? I got nothing. That's all right. It's okay. All a lie. Is it all a lie? Is it all what? Is it all a lie? Is it all a lie? You're answering a question with a question. You win. That's what this series is all about, inventing new questions. So I'm going to ask you one more, and then we're going to bring Rob in, and then I'm going to ask two more to close out. This has been truly enlightening. You know, Thornton Wilder said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 85 minutes, Jay. I appreciate it. And I'm not implying you haven't already answered this, but what's it really all about for you? An end to suffering. Wow, an end to suffering. That is beautiful. Okay, great, Rob Grant. Now, isn't this fun, Rob?
Hello, here I am.
I can't believe you're still there. I can't believe you're awake.
Man, that was amazing. You know, okay, so I was kind of writing some notes down, and there was one thing that you said that really spoke out to me. And it was like, whoa, that's amazing. But you don't have to be a broken soul to create. Yeah. And I thought, you know, speaking about poetry, You also mentioned rules to live by. That you have, some sort of codes, rules to live by. Can you tell us 2 of your rules?
Do no harm.
Hippocratic oath.
Observe before evaluating.
Wow. Buddhism is true.
I think there's a lot of really solid wisdom there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think anyone has the answers. I don't believe in secret knowledge, but I do think that there's a tremendous amount of practically applied wisdom in that culture, and that's those belief systems. Yeah.
That's sort of what Bayesian logic is, right? Is that we kind of just eclecticize everything. Is that sort of what?
Yeah. Again, I'm pretty new to it too, Rob, but I really like what I'm there, and it does seem to be really. And let's see, it's easier for me to assimilate into what I've already got going on than a lot of other junk.
Right.
Which I think which I understand is a big part of it.
Here's my last question for you. Harrison Ford, he doesn't like to watch his own films. I don't think he's ever seen Star Wars, if that's correct, which is, boggles my mind. Nor Indiana Jones. So what is it like? Have you watched films and television shows that you've been in?
I do watch. I come from the Michael Jordan school of acting. So, he would watch his tapes endlessly.
Right.
To make sure he could be the best he could be. And I absolutely want to know where I'm soft, what needs work, where what I wanted to do is occurring, and what's landing, and what I need to do differently. So to me, the idea that an actor wouldn't watch their work, to me, is if they're being truthful, I think they're missing out on a real opportunity to improve.
Right. Yeah.
Great question, Rob. Is that exactly what Susie, my wife, went through for years? She couldn't listen to tapes, and eventually she uses them, and it's a study tool. But I'll just follow up with Rob's. Can you get lost sometimes, Jay, and go, wow, that was good? I mean, do you appreciate your talent? Can you?
It's dissociative. It's obviously you're not as involved as when you're watching someone else's performance. You're definitely aware that you're watching yourself. But I'm absolutely open to saying that was a successful moment.
Yeah.
That came off well. And the opposite of that, of course, that was really weak. I can't believe with everything I've been doing for this long, I'm still dropping balls like this.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
I don't watch a whole lot of TV that much anymore, but what would you say is your magnum opus for something that, because now I want to check your stuff out. So
the thing most people remember me for is a turn on Mad Men as Don Draper's brother.
Yeah.
That's what most people are able to recall. And that's the piece of work that I've done that I think has touched the most people. So there's lots of stuff I'm proud of. And some stuff that's never even seen the light of day. But, and then silly things like being Sky Masterson my senior year in high school. That's going to stay at the top of my life in acting forever, So.
Pretty dang good. This has been truly.
I get your copy if you want to help me upload it. We can.
This is
by all means.
No, I'm just kidding.
Jay, I learned a lot, and I'm excited. That was a great follow-up questions, a series of questions there, Rob. So just 2 more, and we're out of here. Thank you so much, both of you. Jay, what is the most healthiest or impactful cultural shift you see developing today?
That's the most impactful.
I used to just say healthy, but then people think I was talking about physical eating.
Right. Trans fats.
I need a better word. You could probably.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think it's just a difficult question because it's hard to, oh man, it's just really tough. And I want to have some hope, so I'm trying to think. I'll say that we're still publishing poetry is a positive thing. And we're publishing a lot of it, thousands of books a year. And I do believe reading poetry can heal soul to soul or psyche to psyche, if you will.
Really well put, because we're book freaks, all three of us, and we know printed word is great. You can read it on the screen electronically, but having a book in your hands and holding it, poetry, prose, self-help books. Okay, last question, and we'll definitely have you back, Jay Paulson. This has been amazing, and we'll do one where it's all three of us throughout the whole 90. So this was an experiment. Rob, you were so great. You just came in with a killer end question. So Jay, what gives you the most optimism?
Children's laughter.
Ha! Nice.
Beautiful. Listen, another beautiful thing that you've shared with us is the chance to breathe, see our breath, but have silence and know that you are stopping and thinking. So many people, when I do the interview, feel obliged to answer without stopping, because that's what conversation is. Blah, 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 blah. It's like a ping pong game. But to be able to stop, it is like, that's what we need to do in today's world, is just stop for a second. You know, like slow cooking, slow interviews.
The action's in the gap, right?
Yeah, the gap is where the action is. Yes, that's McLuhan. What a note to end on. I like, you read Jay's IMDb and it says, he's interested in anyone who will talk to him about McLuhan. I says, who puts that in their IMDb page? That was pretty dang cool. All right, Jay. Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate you having me. This has been,
of course,
been great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
It's been wonderful. Thank you, guys. Bye now.